I'm Dhiraj. This is Alex.
Nice. How many times have you been welcomed on stage as a rock star?
Oh gosh, never. My son would love to be a rock star. So
Next year you bring him.
yeah, I should bring him next time. Yeah, Max is 9 years old, and I'm hoping he's a rock star and gets such a fabulous reception. So thank you, everyone.
No, thank you for the welcome. We can start talking about the trip because you created this amazing company. You co-founded Shazam, right? And you said, I want the title of the talk to be "What a Long, Strange Trip Has Been."
Yeah.
Why strange? I know long, but why strange?
Okay, so for the old people in the crowd, and there's not many of you, you'll know that it's the name of an album by the Grateful Dead. What a long, strange trip it's been. Unfortunately, most of you will be thinking, oh, I've never heard of it, perhaps. This is showing my age. I'm 49. I've been doing this for a very long time. But strange because I think it had lots of ups and downs, lots of unexpected things, and took 18 years from the time we started the company to the time we sold it. So.
I know it might be just a coincidence, but I'm started wearing socks, and you're wearing Shazam socks.
Wearing Shazam
I don't know if you can see them, but they look really cool. That was not planned. Anyways, let's start with the very beginning.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the idea, and why did you think this idea would work?
Okay, so just for a bit of background, I went to Stanford Business School from 95 to 97. So I happened to be in Silicon Valley just when the internet was starting up, and I thought, this is brilliant, technology, I love it. So I just kind of hopped onto that bandwagon. And being in Silicon Valley at the time, everybody was dreaming of being an entrepreneur. It was, we were entrepreneurs. We wanted to do a tech startup, but we didn't have any ideas. So my business partner, a guy called Chris Barton, and I, we said, okay, tell you what, let's just see if we can come up with an idea. And we brainstormed lots of things, and most of them, frankly, were terrible. It didn't help that we always met in bars and pubs, and we'd be drinking at the time. But so the idea for Shazam actually came from Chris, and it came because he could never identify any music he was listening to. And he's always like, what's that song? I was like, I don't know. So he came up with this idea of being able to connect with radio stations to be able to identify music he was listening to. And then he thought, what would be even better is if you could use your mobile phone to identify music, and that's how the idea came about.
You are also an investor, and you probably come across a lot of different crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but if somebody pitched me the idea of Shazam, I'd say all the ideas are great, but it's execution what matters, right? I've seen really good ideas that never go anywhere, and I've seen really crazy ideas that eventually make it. Like, who would have thought that Twitter would have worked, right? Everybody was like, no, microblogging, what's the use for that, right?
Yeah.
And so how did you turn that idea, what's the iteration process you follow to validate the idea, and then what were the struggles to turn this into a real business?
Oh, so in our founding team, we were 3 MBAs. So Chris and Philippe from Berkeley and myself, I went to Stanford. And none of us, between the 3 of us, had any clue about what domain of technology this was. So we discovered that it was digital signal processing. And we were lucky because the best experts in digital signal processing were at Stanford and Berkeley. And we managed to find a 4th co-founder who's an incredible genius who invented the technology. But Chris and Philippe and I would run around, we'd create these spreadsheets and these models with all kinds of ridiculous fiction about how big the business was going to be and then what incredible margins it would have. None of those forecasts ever came true. And I think I can say this openly now because it's not going to come back and haunt me. But it was really a question of trying to get the product out, which was a lot of hard work. It took us 13 months from the time we did our VC round to the time we actually launched. And after that, the revenues just didn't show up. We're like, excuse me, hello, users, customers, But we were constantly trying to, build a business. We realized that when you have a product and you have a service in the market, then there's still a lot of hard work to get to, that profitability into a sustainable business.
Obviously, you probably didn't nail it in the very beginning. So I was going to ask, does somebody with the GPS on? I was going to ask, so was the first idea you had of the product the one that eventually made it monetize, or how many failed experiments did you do?
Yeah, so Shazam is unusual in the sense it was always that idea of allowing people to identify music. So that we never changed the idea. What changed many times was the business model. So we started off by charging users. So I don't know if anyone remembers using Shazam back in 2002 when we launched. So you dialed a number which was 2580, which is straight down the middle of the mobile, and it'd be a voice call, and you'd get a text message with the name of the song and the artist. And back then, users would get charged for that text message. Unfortunately, the mobile operator kept about 60% of that revenue, and we got a little bit of the rest. The problem was that users would forget the number. They're like, what's the number? I was like, 2580. It can't be easier. Please don't forget my phone number. And still, they'd use it a few times and then they'd stop using it. We then tried selling ringtones. So again, there's probably not many people in this audience who remember a time when you had a dumb phone with ringtones. But
oh yes, it was big in Spain. Yeah, it was big around here. Okay. It was terrible as well.
And so people would buy ringtones, and it would still didn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
And then we did deals with mobile handset manufacturers to preload Shazam when they were shipping units. So that was a little bit better. But still didn't pay the bills. And then I think when iTunes launched, then things started changing. So people would Shazam a song, and they'd buy a song from iTunes. And so at one point, we were the biggest contributor of revenues to iTunes. We generated $300 million in revenue per year. Again, Shazam only took a small part of that. And so on and so forth. I can keep going about our various iterations of the business model.
So how many failed experiments and how much time from the beginning to finding out that iTunes was the key? So how many of this? How long did it take?
Well, I think iTunes, it took us about 6 years to get to that as the primary revenue streams.
Great.
But then it kept going from there. We launched as an app in 2008 when the App Store launched. And that was a game changer for Shazam because people would say, what's an app? And Apple ran ads saying, well, an app is something which you can use on your new iPhone. And here's an example. You can use Shazam and it'll tell you the name of the song. And people are like, oh, that's great. So you just press this button, it tells you the name of the song, and yep. And suddenly it became a much better user experience. It's what we wanted all along, a really simple way of identifying that song. And initially, we had a premium version, so it was a paid app. But we realized over time that people don't really like that kind of barrier. So a few years later, we became a free app, and then adoption really, really grew. But again, we lost the revenues from the paid app. And with the free app, then advertising became a big source of revenue. So we kept adding and kept evolving over time.
Because I was going to ask, my next question was going to be, how did you manage to be 6 years without a super defined business model? Because you were trying things, probably they would work in the short term, that you would change it, you would iterate to something else.
Yes.
How did you survive? Only on ramen and Red Bull?
So when we started the business, the idea was always to serve consumers. And people kept saying to us, what about a business-to-business service? And we said, no, we haven't got the time to think about it. But under pressure of bankruptcy, which helps to focus the mind, we developed a business-to-business service which allowed companies to monitor what's being played on the radio, for instance, so that artists could get paid their royalties. Artists get paid based on public performances. And we actually managed to do a deal with one of the biggest collection agencies, but to the point where we sold them our technology. And the reason for that was otherwise we couldn't keep the lights on. And we were very, very lucky that after the iPhone launched and after we managed to raise more funding in 2009, we were able to buy back our patent portfolio. But it was literally like, selling the family jewels just to be able to live to fight one more day.
Is that part of the struggle of being an entrepreneur? Was that the hardest part of creating Shazam and trying to launch it, or were there harder times? Can you share a couple of them?
Yeah, I did a talk at Startup Grind in London where the title was "Don't Try This at Home," talking to entrepreneurs, and the feedback was that's not a good title. So I've stopped saying that. Please do try this at home. But I think so. Survival is a critical thing, and the only reason I think I have the pleasure of having this conversation is because we were able to survive. But in that process of survival, for instance, 3 or 4 times we had to let people go. People who I remember being in a tiny office with 6 or 8 of us, working 14 hours a day, trying to make this dream of being an entrepreneur come true. And to turn around to a friend like that and say, I'm sorry, we can't pay you next month, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But I think as entrepreneurs, when we make that decision, sometimes we have to confront that reality. And that's the life of an entrepreneur, unfortunately.
That brings me to my next question, which was going to be doing business with friends, right? I co-created my company with my 2 best friends. I'm really happy to say that. And it seems it's also your case. And how has been that? How have you managed this? You said you had to fire some friend as well, right?
Yeah.
What's the hardest point of this, and what lessons can you share with the audience?
Yes, so for me, the friendships which I've made at Shazam and friendships which I've carried forward have been the best thing about my entrepreneurial journey. And I would wish that on anyone who is an entrepreneur or anyone in business, because to me it's super important to work with people who share my values. And that's what my business partners and I had in common. And we were able to hire people who shared those values as well, of just doing the right thing and being authentic, I guess is the term we use nowadays, but standing for what we mean. And the fact that 18 years later we're still extremely close friends, I think, is a testimony to that. So I would always say, and we were friends in the sense that we were, Chris and Philippe were like super good pals from business school. Chris and I were really good buddies. And that friendship gets you through the hard times, when you're exhausted because you've been under pressure for such a long time, but you can turn to your friend and they're there for you. I think that makes a huge difference. I would not take that away. Of course, friends can argue, and we would argue. Of course, you can fall out with a friend, and that happens. But to me, it's about the journey and not about the outcome. It's not about getting to a sale, or it's about who you're spending really precious time with.
Because actually they say that the worst 2 times to be involved in business with your friends is when your business is really successful or it goes really bad.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're also not actively involved with Shazam anymore. So how was the process of leaving the company? And of course it was in good terms, but there's any lesson you learned there, saying to your friends like, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore? And how was it? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So part of our conditions of funding was to bring in a management team. So we brought in a CEO and a full management team. So I left actually now many years ago, about 15 years ago, and I went to join Save the Children. So I wanted to do something which I felt was giving back and helping to create a better society, and I felt really good about that choice. But I stayed on the board as an observer for about 10 years after that, so I was actively involved with the business. Chris has been a director since 2010, and so we've remained shareholders and involved with the growth of the business, but not kind of day to day. And at the end of the day, we were extremely lucky. 1, to have made it for 18 years, 2, to have had an exit. And you look back, and I feel super grateful for that journey. If I had spent 18 years at Shazam, I think I would have got a lot more gray hair. Yeah. But it's been an amazing effort by a whole number of people over a long time. Yeah.
So after the partnership with iTunes and then continuous growth, then sort of becoming one of the most popular apps in the planet, and then the exit to Apple on all of that, I take it that your shareholder, your partner's agreement, right, with your founders was very clear, right, from the get-go, because one of the main debating points with co-founders is usually that probably you're too busy with the business. They say, let's create a business. We'll figure out this shit later, right?
Yeah.
How was yours, and why didn't you have any conflicts there or major conflicts with your friends?
Yes, so this is a great example of our values at work, which is we agreed right up front that we'd all be equal shareholders in the business.
Right.
So the equity was divided 4 ways. Now, we didn't say it was your idea, you should have more. I'm the CEO, I should have more. You're much smarter than the other 3 of us, you should have more. It was, we were all in it together. And
Right.
I think that makes a huge difference because I don't think that the business would have been successful if you took out any individual. That's a great example of, I think, what brought us together and kept us together the whole time.
What other lessons learned have you got to say to people? Because a lot of us have got startups here and are entrepreneurs, but some of them are on the verge of actually quitting their jobs and creating a company. They come here for the inspiration. Is there any sort of advice you want to tell these people, like, hey, you should do this because of that, or this is the right time, or what would you...
Yeah, this is so boring. I can't believe it. But I would say just make sure you do your housekeeping, do your admin, get your shareholders agreement exactly right, get your IP assignment right, make sure that you've got the job descriptions done. And when I talk to entrepreneurs and give them this advice, they're like, yeah, don't worry. Okay, like, you didn't listen, did you? Make sure you, because when we did the transaction with Apple, they went through all the documents very carefully. The housekeeping is really important, even though the energy and the excitement of building a business, meeting lots of people, trying to do sales, yes, but the details do matter.
Let's talk about sales.
Yeah.
Because eventually that's what keeps your company afloat, right?
Yes.
And for a company that's so difficult to monetize as Shazam, it must have been a real struggle. How did you find how to monetize? Who was the expert in the company, and why did you start doing B2C and then transition to B2B? When was that, this kind of epiphany that brought you there?
Sure. So both Chris and Philippe are unbelievable at business development.
All right.
Yeah. So they were...
So it was mostly partnerships at the beginning?
Yeah.
Great.
So when we launched, for instance, we had to have a partnership with each of the mobile operators in the UK to be able to offer the same 4-digit number so that it would be the same code across all operators. There's only one other business in the UK which had achieved that. And if you're a tiny startup without a product in the market, talking to a Vodafone or to an O2 about doing a deal, there's a queue of about 150 people. And we just, through sheer persistence, managed to get those deals done. And you have to create that vision. If you have an idea in your head, people will say, that can't be done. I'm sorry, that's not possible. That's not how we work. Please fill out this form. And if we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and creating this picture, which people could buy into, and I think that's the essence of sales, is that combination of projecting that image in somebody else's mind. There was one representative of an operator we called 44 times before he took a meeting with us. We kept leaving him voicemails, never responded. Never, until called 44 times, and he said, yeah, let's meet up next week.
All right, finally. Why on the 44th time?
You know what, I'm going to call him tomorrow and ask him, because
okay.
I don't know.
Well, persistence is something that's really admired in entrepreneurs. They said, like, you got to be there, politely persistent.
Exactly.
But sending an email 44 times seems quite insistent to me.
Yeah.
One of the things that B2C products or some products that are difficult to conceptualize how they monetize is that sometimes they have like some side projects that you sell on the background to other companies. Maybe there's data, there's other kind of partnerships. You do ad hoc integrations with other companies. I remember I was in a conference, I don't remember if it was in San Francisco, but Shazam's CEO did a demonstration of the audio signal processing that couldn't be heard. It was for advertisement. I think it was for a car company, like BMW, something like that.
Yes.
And you could see, he said, like, just fire up Shazam right now. There was an advertisement on TV, and you would do it, you wouldn't hear anything because it was a signal that's not, it was not audible, right, for us, for humans. And then, boom, the advertisement or the promotion would load in your phone. Did that eventually work or not? How many of these products did you develop, and were they also a big part of your revenue model?
Yeah, so we actually developed a number of ways to interact with media and TV ads, particularly at the time when second screening was a big trend. So you'd be watching TV and you'd have a device. And I think that for brands, it was a great way to turn television from a broadcast medium into an interactive medium. And Shazam has done lots and lots of campaigns and brought it to life, but it's never become like the main part of the business. It's never become what Shazam is famous for. It's still that old trick from back in 2002 about identifying that song. So it's helped to broaden the business, but it's never become our greatest hit.
Actually, I wanted to ask, as an investor, would you have invested in the first idea or the first iteration of Shazam?
If you look at the founding team, I'd say forget it. I mean, we were a bunch of jokers. But no.
Maybe the first three that had the same profile, right? But then you had the other guy joining the technical.
No, that's true. That's true. I forget. Yeah. Once Avery joined, then everything changed. No, I wouldn't have. I would have said, it's a great idea. You're really nice guys. You seem quite enthusiastic. This is never going to work, and I would have been right. So the chances of that business actually working out was so small. It took some crazy people to, put their faith in us, and I'd like to thank all our early investors and the people who took that plunge. But now I'm old and sensible. I wouldn't touch that. No.
And that's great advice. I wouldn't invest in my own company, right? But the thing is, at what point do you think it was something worth taking a look into? It's like, oh, now I would invest. You as an investor, at what point would you say, like, oh, now it's when I should put my money in this company? After some kind of partnership or revenue coming in, or the partnership with iTunes? What was the point?
I think that when it's the right time to invest, then there's lots of other investors, and then you don't need it. I think it's two things. One is, from an investor perspective, you need that passion. So you go, I love that. I can really relate to your idea. And the second thing is, I think I can really help you. I believe in you, and I can really make a contribution. And bringing that combination together, I think it's a real symbiosis between the entrepreneur and the investor working in partnership. It's an emotional journey, And if somebody's just writing a check or just saying, one of 25 checks, I don't think that's good enough. And that's the nature of entrepreneurship. You're going to, win some, you're going to lose a lot. But, going through that journey together is what I try to sign up for. And so my investment theme is tech for good. So I invest in startups which are trying to use technology to create a better society. And it's not about, for me, it's not about the outcome, whether it's cleaning up pollution in the oceans or whether it's providing, pure drinking water. It's more about, can I make a contribution to, that person's dream and help them on that journey and do something to open doors or to contribute. So I wouldn't change that. I like to be one of the crazy ones who would put my energy and time into something, even though other people are saying it's not possible.
Let's talk about this. What are the stages in which you invest? You want to invest in companies that want to change the world for the better.
Yes.
But at what stage, what kind of deals, what sectors specifically? Maybe we've got a large community in 500 cities all over the world.
Yes.
Maybe we can help you to find some deals.
Yeah, that would be great. So I think I look for what I call the mind of an entrepreneur. So somebody who emails me once and then twice and then 3 times, late at night, and just that kind of persistence and won't take silence for an answer. A second, who has that that energy and the ability to kind of work with people, make things happen, open doors. The third thing is about having that real passion and having call it values or call it a determination, a calling. And then fourth, somebody who can, learn and evolve as they go. And sometimes those things trade off. So if you're very, very passionate and you know exactly what you want to do, then you don't take guidance. But whether it's an individual or a team, with the benefit of having such a long entrepreneurial journey, I know that it's not going to be next week or next month. It's going to be many years. And if that individual and that team are willing to go on that journey, then I'm happy to lend my help, because the world will be a different place at the end of that journey. But that's what I call the mind of an entrepreneur, that willingness to keep going even when things are against you and keep that dedication to the mission.
How about red flags?
Yeah.
Something you see, you detect on entrepreneurs pitching you or on their decks, website, their team composition, they say this is a no-go for me as an investor.
I don't know. I can think of things, but I tend to operate more or less instinctively. So with people you can resonate with in the way they speak. And one of the things which I quite enjoy is listening. So listening to what's on somebody's mind. So I had a great conversation at dinner last night, for instance, where Victor, who was talking about the charitable work which he's doing. I didn't bring up the topic. It came up. And so if you listen for what is that person passionate about, then I can say, yes, we're on the same wavelength, or I'm not. If it's rational, you're saying there's a checklist, then I don't think it works as well. And the analogy I use, it's like dating, it's an emotional thing. You know when you're attracted to somebody and you click, but you don't go through a rational checklist or say, oh, I don't.
So you don't have a checklist of no two people with the same profile in the founding team, no family members, no, I don't know, things like that? There's nothing that you don't check actively in the companies?
No, not at this stage. Maybe I will over time. I mean, I've been investing for a couple of years now, and I like to think that I'm helping entrepreneurs at the early part of their journey, where it's an incredible learning curve. There's so much which you change over time with experiences as well. I think of it as a sort of like a 15-year sort of cycle, and then maybe those patterns will become clear over time. But now I'm more at the stage which is that person reminds me of the crazy ones we were 18 years ago. What can I do to help them?
So that's the thing. A lot of successful entrepreneurs, and they turn investors, and they do this game, which is the both sides of the table, right? I've been there, now I'm here, I'm the one giving you the money, right? How much of an advice are you giving to them as an investor? So like, is it even sometimes bordering on being patronizing, like, oh, that's not gonna work because I try it? Do you do that? Do you see yourself doing that? Or are you much more just accompanying them by just advising, or how do you do that as an investor?
Yeah, so
how actively do you get involved in the...
Yes, so one of the biggest things which I took away from my time at Save the Children was the power of young people.
Yeah.
So I'm really passionate about empowering young people. So I work with, I've got a chief of staff who's 22 years old. He's absolutely brilliant, and he helps me to understand how Gen Z thinks and acts. And I feel what I can do for people who are my age or older is to give them an insight into the next generation and what motivates them, what makes them happy. And so I'm doing a favor to people who've had a long career or who are at a different stage to be able to connect with the next generation. And the entrepreneurs which I work with, I just let them, open doors. Connect with people, have the conversation directly. So I don't try to get involved hands-on. I don't try to become like a coach, but I just try to matchmake between people with experience who can open doors and entrepreneurs who have that passion to create a better society.
Two really quick questions to wrap this up.
Yeah.
The first one is, how can we help you? That's our core value at Startup Brain. What can we do to help you?
I would love to connect with more experienced investors or mentors who who understand tech for good and can show me how I can contribute more.
And the second one, and this is a tricky question,
yes.
And I'm sorry to put you in a difficult situation, but everybody has got a useless superpower, something you do exceptionally well, but it's fucking useless.
Oh yeah.
What's yours?
Okay, so I can speak a foreign language in a foreign accent. So,
How does that work?
Okay, so for instance,
can you speak Spanish with Colombian accent?
No. I can. So, for instance, I can speak. I can speak French. So, I can put on a fake French accent. It's not a problem. But I'm from India, so I'm Bengali.
Yeah.
So I speak Bengali. So আমি বাংলাতে কথা বলতে পারি. But I can also speak Bengali with a French accent. So, তুমি চাও আমি French accent দিয়ে বলতে পারি? তুমি বাঙালি? So totally useless. I'm sorry, can you...
Dhiraj, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.